Happy New Year! I like to imagine the year as a circle because I like circles. So this January, I'll publish more videos about circles, starting with this one, where I'll show you 10 different ways to draw a circle on an HTML canvas using JavaScript. And spoiler alert, this one may not be the best. Stay tuned till the end to find out why. Now get your coding editors ready and let's reinvent the wheel 10 different times. Get it? Because we draw a circle. No.
Gonna code, debug, and have fun. Coding with Radu. Coding with Radu. Gonna prototype and design. Coding with Radu. Coding with Radu. Let's code now.
I'm gonna be using Visual Studio Code, and in an empty folder, let's create our index.html file. And now start writing basic HTML syntax. Let's have the HTML open and closing tags, and in it, the head tag with a title. I'm gonna call it 10 circles. If you save this and open it in your favorite browser, it's gonna look like this. I'm using Google Chrome, and you can see that the title only appears here at the top. When coding, I always recommend to open these developer tools on the right. It's gonna say if you have any errors, and we can inspect elements in the DOM using it. Now the page is empty, so there's nothing inside of this body, and the browser actually fills in the body for you, but it's proper to write here the syntax. So body, and this time I'm not going to add here specifically elements inside of the DOM, but I will import a JavaScript file like this. To create this JavaScript file, you can control-click in Visual Studio Code, and it's going to create it for you, like that. And in it, we're going to add 10 different canvas elements where we're going to do the drawings. We do that in JavaScript because we can use a loop, and we can generate all of them with one instruction. So let's set a size for these small canvases, maybe 200 pixels, and they will be square. And then let's loop for I at 1 going to 10. We are going to generate a new canvas element using the document create element function. And then let's set its width and height to the size like this. And to see them, we also have to add them to the body of the document. So append child canvas. Now, if you save and refresh, you don't really see anything here, but this slider appears in my case, and the canvases are actually part of the body here. They are transparent, so we cannot see them visually in some way. We can fix that by giving the canvases some styles. Maybe we can give them a solid border of 1 pixel. Now they look like that. Maybe also a little bit of margin here so they don't touch. Let's say 5 pixels. And now it looks like that. We will be drawing circles in each of these squares. So we will need to access here the context that has the drawing methods that we'll need. And we'll use the 2D context. And then draw a circle on each of these 10 contexts. Now, this draw circle is a function that we need to implement, and it's going to just take the context as a parameter and draw a circle centered in it. I'll do that by beginning a path, setting a line width of 3, I want it to be clearly visible. And then let's say the radius is going to be a fraction of the size. So I'm going to use size times 0.4, because if it's going to be 0.5, it will touch the sides of the canvas, and I want there to be a small margin. And I'm going to use the pretty much most common way of drawing a circle, that is the arc method. So the parameters here mean the center location of the circle, in this case the middle of the canvas horizontally and vertically, and then the radius of the circle, and we want a full circle here. So starting at 0 and going all the way to 360 degrees or 2 pi radians. And we stroke. If we save and refresh, we are going to get this. But the whole point of today's project is to draw each of these circles in a different way. And we'll do that, but to make things easier, I want to do a small trick first. Before drawing this circle here, I'm going to translate the canvas by half its width and half its height. Doing this is going to move the circles here off screen somehow, because now the center of the canvas is here. This is 0, 0. It's no longer this location here. But the reason we do this translation is that then we don't need to worry about these parameters here. They can be 0, 0. And it's going to look as before. This will make what we do next easier, I think. So let's make this draw circle method have a parameter here. It's going to be called method. And when calling draw circle, we will use the value of I as the method. So now here we have the first method of drawing the circle using the arc method, but we are going to switch depending on the parameter. So switch depending on this method, case 1, the first method, and now I'm going to indent this and then break the switch and close this curly brace. So if we refresh, we get now this. The circle is only drawn in the first canvas because this will be the drawing for method 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they have not been implemented yet. So let's see what the second way of drawing the circle is. And instead of this arc, we are going to use an ellipse. This is a relatively new method added to the HTML canvas. And it's because it used to be very difficult to draw ellipses. Otherwise, you have to do some kind of canvas manipulation, like scaling it, rotating it, and so on. But this new function has been added, and similar to the arc, it starts with 0, 0, or the center location where you want the ellipse to be. And then it has 2 radii, because the ellipse is elongated in some way. So you have a longer radius and a smaller radius. And I'm just going to set both of these to be the same, because that's how a circle looks like. And the 5th parameter, this one has quite many parameters, is actually the rotation. The ellipse can also be rotated. I don't want the rotation in mine, or I could set any value here really, because it's still going to look like a circle. It has this nice symmetry. And the last 2 parameters are the same as here. So I want a full ellipse, not just a section of it. Let's break, save the file, refresh the page, and there it is. And if you don't know how ellipses work, then you can try playing here with these parameters, like maybe using half the radius there, and you see it gets flattened like that, and this rotation here, it's in radians. But basically, I don't want to do that. I just want to show you that you can draw a circle like this using the ellipse method. Now let's move on to the third way. And that is going to be to use a rounded rectangle. Funny story is when I was making this tutorial, the script for this, it was over a year ago. I think it was a year and a half ago. And then this round rect method didn't exist, or at least it wasn't documented, because it was working, but none of the documentations had it there. So it was kind of in the experimental stage. But by now you can see it's there, and it's supported on many browsers. We are going to start in the top left corner, so minus radius, and then we're going to draw a rectangle, a square really, with twice the radius width and twice the radius height. But this rectangle is going to have also a rounded corner, and I want it to be the value of the radius here, how much the roundness is going to be. We'll play with that then, and you'll see. Let's save this, refresh, and there it is. So if your value here for the final parameter is something like 10, then it's going to look like that. And maybe 40 is going to look like that. But we are using here radius because then it's going to be this whole length right here. So it looks like a circle. You may wonder, how did people draw these rounded rectangles before that? And they used a technique similar to what we're going to use next, the arc2 method. So let me go here and case 4. First, I'm going to move to the left, so minus radius and 0. And then I want to do an arc to the top. We are just going to draw a quarter of a circle first. Now, arc 2, and the first thing here will be a control point. It's going to be a point in the top left corner. And the second one is going to be the destination. So nothing on x, it's just on top minus radius. And the radius for this arc is the last parameter, also radius. And let's break, refresh, and this is what you get. So people used to draw rounded rectangles by doing these things and then connecting with some lines and more arcs. We are just going to use the arc to 3 more times to get the full circle. And I won't go into much details what I'm doing. I think that by now you understand the idea here, and you can double check if I'm making sense when passing these parameters here, but basically the logic should be clear by now. So let's save this and refresh, and you get the full circle. Now the next method we'll do uses the Pythagorean theorem, and if you need, I have a video on that. But basically, idea is simple. The radius is going to act as the hypotenuse, and we're going to get all possible values for x, and then using the hypotenuse we can figure out the y coordinate. Now, not really all possible values of x, I'm going to sample just the integers, but it's going to look good because we're at the pixel level here. So let's see. I'm going to move first also on the left as before, and then let's loop with x from minus radius to plus radius. So all possible values, all possible integers for x. And for each of these, we can calculate the y value by using the square root of the hypotenuse squared minus the other leg squared. So here we get the y value in that way, and we can do a line to xy at this stage. Let's also break, save the file, refresh the page, and this is what we get. From minus radius to radius, all values for x, are going to calculate a value for y and then draw small lines between each of them. Now, we need to complete the circle, so I'm going to now loop from plus radius to minus radius and do the same thing, but flip the y value, make it negative this time. These positive values are always coming from the square root when we have real values, so we want to have negative values now. I just continue with a loop from radius greater than minus radius and x minus minus, and then y is going to be the same thing but with the minus in front, like that, and then line to xy. Refresh, and there it is. Now the next method will use polar coordinates, and it's probably my favorite method because I've used it a lot to make different manipulations, like in my Kamehameha video tutorial, and also the trees in the self-driving car course. They all are based on using polar coordinates and the unit circle, essentially. If you are not familiar with polar coordinates, then I do have a video on the topic. But basically, we are going to start on the right this time, because that's where we have our 0 angle at the unit circle. And now we're going to increase the angle all the way to 360 degrees. So from 0 all the way to 2 pi radians, or 360 degrees. I like to increase it with a fraction of pi, something really small like this. And for each of these, we're going to draw those small lines again, but now we have to calculate the x and y values based on this angle and the radius. So we are getting the Cartesian coordinates from the polar coordinates, this direction here and the magnitude. So same for the y, but with the sign and radius, and then line to xy as before. Now, if you refresh, you're going to see a small gap here, and I typically fix that by typing here close path, because even if you would include here 2 pi, when you're working with these floating point values, it might not reach that exactly, and then you still need to close some small gap. And then break to prepare for the next case. So this fixes it. Now let's try to use some other curves, like the quadratic curve. We're going to move again to the left. I like that location. And it's going to be very similar to the arc2 method from previous, but now we're going to need a different control point. We can't just use the radius as before. Let's set it to the radius just as the start, and then we tweak it a little bit. And then use quadratic curve 2 minus c, 0 minus radius. So again, the curve is going to be towards the top, and this control point is pretty much same as before. Minus radius, going here. Let's break and refresh, and you see this quadratic curve here. The control point is now here, and this kind of looks too much going outward like this. It's not the same curvature that we have here. So we could play with this, maybe multiply by 0.9 or something, and this is going to move the control point a little bit closer here on that diagonal. If we refresh, you see it got a little bit different shape. Let's try to use this value and see how the full circle looks like. Again, I'm going to fill in these parameters without explaining too much, because you already got the logic of what is going on. And I type much faster when I just read from my notes. Okay, and refreshing looks like that. It's not great. It has here some pointy tips. Maybe if our control point is going to be a little bit more outward, so 95. This looks good. It's not a perfect circle though. So I'm going to mark it here. I'm going to give it a different color so we can tell them apart. And now we see it like this here. Now the next curve we're going to use is called the Bezier curve. Both of these, quadratic curve 2 and Bezier curve 2 method, are creating Bezier curves really, but different degrees. So we had the quadratic and now we're going to see the cubic. Again, I'm going to use a variable to control our control points, and let's set it to the radius as well. And similar as before, I'm going to draw just one of those curves, quarter sections first. And notice here, 2 control points. So we have minus radius, minus radius, minus radius, minus radius. So both control points now are in the top left corner. And that's going to make it quite much like the rounded rectangle we had previously. But anyway, at the end, it is going to go just to the top and middle. So let's break this, save, refresh, and 2 control points are here. That's a very strong pull towards them. And I want to use that D variable to move them. One of them will move down like this, and the other one will move to the right like that, depending on how much of the radius we use. And I think a decent value to try is 0.5. And we get this. Let's see how it looks like when we complete the circle. So again, I'm going to do the same thing, but somehow reflecting on the right. And then at the bottom. And then back towards the left, our original starting location here. So let's save, refresh, and I think it can be a little bit higher, this D value, maybe 55. Let's refresh. Yeah, this looks much more like a circle. But again, these are not really circles from the theory point of view. So I will mark this one as well using orange. And nice homework for you would be to figure out what are the optimum values for this D and C to have so that it looks at most like a circle. Maybe you could use tricks from tutorials where I'm teaching you about how to measure roundness of things. I don't know. I have a couple of ideas in mind to calculate it, but I think you can even use pure math to do it. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you decide to give it a shot. Now, the next way will be not really drawing curves at all. We will just draw one very short line. You'll see. We're going to set a very, very thick line width, like this. And we're going to use the line cap property, which can be set to round. So the ends of the line are going to be round in shape. And now all we have to do is do a line to at 0, 0. So this is going to draw a line from 0, 0 to 0, 0, which should be invisible. But because of this round line cap, is going to be a filled circle, really. So let's stroke and break. Save and refresh. And this is what we get. It's a little bit smaller than the other, I think, because of the different line width. Maybe that's going to fix it. And to get it to be an empty circle, you have to draw it again with a little bit smaller line width in the middle and play around with the global composite operations. So I'm going to set a global composite operation of destination out, and this is going to basically remove part of the drawing that is going to be covered by the next shape. So I'm going to set a line width that is a little bit smaller, like this, and then do another line 2 there. And I don't need to stroke because it's already happening here at the end. Let's save this and refresh. And this looks decent, I think. Maybe a little bit different than the others, but I can't really tell the difference. Anyway, funny story is that this method, drawing filled circles, is faster, 3 times faster on average than using this arc method from here if you want to draw filled circles like that. It's probably slower if you do this manipulation as well to draw the empty circles, but it might still be a little bit faster. I don't know. I didn't try that experiment. But Goki asked me about this, and I did do an experiment where I drew a bunch of circles using this method and also the arc method, and this was 3 to 4 times faster on Google Chrome. On Firefox, it wasn't that significant of a difference, but funny thing, I mean, you could draw much more particles, for example, using this method than the arc method. So I guess it's a kind of a hack, and it's a useful thing for somebody to know. I found it funny anyway. And the improvement is more significant when you have more and more circles. So if you have just few circles to be drawn, then it's not that big of a difference. But anyway, try it out. Try to replicate my experiment and let me know if it works for you. I'm also curious what would happen in other browsers. And actually, come to think of it, what would be the most efficient method to draw circles or near circles? Maybe trying all of these techniques out and doing some kind of small scale research would be a nice homework for somebody if you want to give it a shot. But now let me teach you another way to draw the circle. And you know how if you take a pencil in your hand and you fix your hand on the paper, maybe like at this point, and then rotate the paper, it's going to draw a circle? Well, that's what we're gonna do next. So case 10, I'm going to move to the left again. So this is gonna be where the pencil touches the paper. And now we're going to do, let's say, 60 small moves. So I'm going to set n to 60, and I'm going to go from I is 1 all the way to 60 I++. And then I rotate the canvas a little bit by 2 pi divided by n. So a small fraction that we repeat n times, and then we get the full circle. And we simply line to the same location, minus rad 0, because the rotation handles the other thing. And notice again, I'm not including the last value here, and that's because I'm going to do a close path here as before, and break. Now save, refresh, and it's this one right here at the bottom. So this is it, 10 ways to draw circles. But because these two are a little bit shady, I'm gonna teach you one more way to do it. And this is going to be using pixel manipulation. When people do this in other contexts, they tend to refer to them as shaders. But I try not to use that word because typically you do those operations on a GPU and they are parallelized quite a lot. Anyway, so I'm looping through all pixel values now, from minus radius to radius, horizontally and vertically. So in that kind of square where the circle should appear, I'm looping in there. And I'm going to use the circle equation. I have a video on that as well. But because the circle is now centered at 0, 0, it's going to be a simplified form, and it kind of looks like the Pythagorean theorem. So if the pixel where we are at now satisfies this relationship, it means that we are now processing a pixel that is on the circle. And I'm going to draw a small rectangle there. A rectangle at xy, and I'm just going to give it a 1 pixel width and 1 pixel height, so a small dot. And let's break here and define also the 11th canvas. So here at the top, we need to draw this somewhere. Let's save, refresh, and this is our 11th canvas here, and it looks kind of funny. But that's because these are the only integer coordinates, pixel coordinates, that truly lie on the circle. The circle is an infinitely thin shape. We are just giving here a line width of 3 to be able to see it and to see it well. But it's actually infinitely thin, and the probability to lie on a circle like this by just going through the pixel values is quite low. There are not so many integer coordinates that are on the circle. So we have to use a kind of a tolerance here and accept also points that are close to the circle. I'm going to go back here and let's just calculate the difference. How far are we from the circle? And this we can get using the square root of x squared plus y squared. So this is the hypotenuse, and then we subtract the radius from there. If we are exactly at the radius, then we are perfectly on the circle. But if not, then we might be outside or inside. And this will cause some negative values to appear, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to take the absolute value. I want to know how far we are from the circle, but I don't care on which side. And now with this difference, I can rewrite this if conditional statement here so that we say if the difference is less than 1, for example, then we draw this rectangle. And now we save, refresh, and it looks better, but it's kind of rough around the edges here. We could draw this nicer. First of all, these strokes that we are drawing here with the rect are quite thick. If you remember up here, we set the line width to 3. So making them thinner is going to be better. And also, the reason why these other circles look so nice is because of anti-aliasing. So if you zoom in very much, you will see that on the sides of these shapes, you don't have pure black, you have some kind of gray value. And I'm going to do that, kind of. I'm going to make the pixels that are far away from the circle have transparency to them, and that will be kind of like a gray value. Let's see. So we need to begin a path here because the rectangles that we draw aren't all the same style. And then let's set that line width to 1 and the stroke style still black, so 0, 0, 0 for red, green, blue. But then I'm gonna concatenate here with 1 minus the difference. So if the difference is 0 perfectly on the circle, then this opacity is going to be maximum, 100%. But if not, it's going to decrease somehow. And then we want to stroke each of these individual rectangles there. Now, if we save this and refresh, we get something that looks like this.
Did you learn anything today? What? Tell me in the comments and let me know if you have a different way to draw a circle. Thanks for watching and see you guys.